Hi, sweetie. Hello, everybody. Denise and I come to you every week as two trauma survivors walking each other home. We come to you with open hearts, we come to you with open souls, and we come to you with a lot of life experience that we've focused on recovering from the fact that our brains, our hearts, our bodies, our spirits, our professions, our careers were affected by the fact that when we were children, we were not just exposed, but we experience deep amounts of trauma. So we come together to invite you to join us every week as we talk about what's going on in our worlds, just an everyday world, but what can we do as trauma survivors to walk each other home? Like Denise and I help each other out, and we invite you to join us in doing that. And how can we just tell the truth without dramatizing it, tell the truth with the intention of resolving issues that we face. So, Denise, welcome, sweetie. Big day
Thank
coming
you.
up in America. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I really feel strong sensations of the Me Too movement and that women are gonna make this.
So, tell us. So some of us maybe are not. I am, but not everybody's familiar with the Me Too movement. Tell us about when that came out and what that was about, and why it
Okay,
affects you today.
first thing I want to say is there's a warm line if you become triggered by any of our discussion and you need some extra support or some individual support. You can Google on your telephone trauma warm line and it will provide you with resources.
Thanks for saying that, Denise, because at any point, that's one of the facts of being a trauma survivor. At any point, something can come out of the blue, comes out of the blue to my conscious mind, but it comes out of really predictable places to my body because the body keeps the score. Things can trigger me, like a smell, like a door slamming, like a gunshot, like a person raising his voice in the home next door, or just a feeling of powerlessness. These all can trigger, and it's very natural and normal to have these. So what Denise is saying is, look, if we talk about something like feeling discouraged and not seen as a child, and that affects you, you can just take a break, drink the water. We always bring water to drink to keep ourselves
Cheers.
refreshed. And you can also just take a break and just say, I'm going to go call somebody and talk about this. When you call people, their job is not to judge you. Their job is just to listen as people that understand trauma and give you a place where it's safe. And that's what we're about, is being safe. So Denise started mentioning that she has hopeful feelings, and hopeful feelings that also related to something that happened years ago called the Me Too movement. And I'm asking her to tell us about that, but also please set the stage, sweetie. Not that it's a stage, but just where are we in the United States of America on today, November the 4th, 2024, that people from other countries might not be facing?
We are at the deciding moment of Kamala Harris or Donald Trump.
Yes. And how does that affect our lives as trauma survivors, do you think? If, with the election, how might it affect us?
I mean, Donald Trump is being downright vulgar at this time. And that vulgarness is part of the patriarchal manipulation to have us be quiet.
To become afraid, to become
Right.
very afraid. And that's a good point. If you're watching the if you're watching American politics, the decision couldn't be clearer between having our first woman. Denise, can you believe that America has not had a woman as the president yet?
It is really startling to me because I feel like we should be leaders in the world, but many other countries have had women before us, and
Yeah, and
it's
really
sad.
capable.
Some of
Mhm.
my friends who are feminist were so devastated by the loss that Hillary Clinton took to Donald Trump, which, he probably manipulated stuff to, she won the I don't know.
No, we can talk about this openly because what I'm going to say from the very beginning is, Denise, I know, we know how we feel. As trauma survivors, we were taught not to say things. You just said it. We're supposed to be silent. But in this program, I'm okay with our outing ourselves as long as I say to listeners, wherever you are, you have a right to be wherever you are. And so what I'm saying is true for me doesn't have to be true for you. However, Denise and I guarantee you that we will always ask beneath the surface, what are we learning as trauma survivors going through this trauma? Because it's an everyday trauma. So, Denise, I think you do know. And I just want to give you an example of what you're talking about when the last woman who ran against Donald Trump was in a debate. It was very different than the debate this year. And there's
Yes,
a moment that I, as a trauma survivor, could not sleep after watching that moment. There was a lot of lack of structure then to the presidential debates. And so when it was time for Hillary Clinton to speak, she was relating directly to the people. So she went out. Denise, you probably remember this. She went out and she was talking directly to the people, which she didn't know. And what nobody stopped was that behind her, this big male angry figure came out and shadowed her wherever she went. And those of us who were watching, me, trauma survivor, it triggered me into this fear state that I couldn't sleep that night. And I didn't know I thought, as usual, I used to think I'm the only one having this, but Denise, I wasn't the only one. When I got up the next morning and I was ready to write about how this was re-triggering the trauma, being stalked, women being stalked and no one stopping it, and being threatened. This is a big man, and it was scary. I realized that there was a whole movement of trauma survivors that were saying this was scary as hell. How
right.
would you describe how different, and that trauma re-traumatized me and a lot of us, and I still can go back into trauma just with that image. There it is. Just an image, a smell, a sound, sense can be really scary. And how can I deal with that? What I did back then was to say, I'm going to face this by connecting with people about it. I'm going to tell my truth and ask for others to tell theirs. Now, what happened differently, Denise, this time in the one presidential debate that was very different, both non-verbally and verbally?
Right. Kamala had the strong presence on the stage. Everything she said that was to bait him, intentionally bait him to behave in an unreasonable way, he took every bite. And
And how did she start it off, sweetie? What did she do to start it off?
I can't even remember exactly, but I just know that she, dominated. She held her power. She
Mm-hmm.
did not ever let any intimidation, even though I don't think Hillary Clinton was particularly intimidated, but Kamala was more assertive
Yes.
against. Yeah,
And I bet someplace, because our bodies remember, I bet your body will remember what happened when Kamala walked on stage. She didn't just walk behind her podium.
no,
She
she
did
walked
what?
over there and looked at him and said, "Come on." Yeah, I
Said,
love that.
I am, and she said her name correctly, so he couldn't get it incorrectly the rest of the time. I
Right.
am Kamala Harris. Walked into his territory. That to me was such a signal. This is how we can, as trauma survivors, give each other signals. This was such a signal that she was not going to be terrified by a big man who is a convicted felon, 34 felony counts. This is the first man I've known ever able to run for president of the United States. Could be in jail instead. The other thing is, he has been found liable for sexual molestation. of a woman and ordered to pay millions of dollars. And other women have lined up right after that. So for a woman, no matter what our orientation is, Denise, I feel like someone threatening us with bodily power and bodily takeover. And bodily takeover can not just be by the physical presence, it can be by shame. And that shame can put me right back as a trauma survivor into feeling I have no power. You said she kept her power. Did you notice that there were attempts to shame her?
Um, Not specifically that I can remember, but nothing penetrated. She was prepared.
So it's fascinating because I feel, Denise, you and I are doing something right now, which is very appropriate and very typical for trauma survivors. You, and tell me if you see it differently, but you take in the whole experience
Yeah,
and you take away the impression of the whole experience. When I become re-traumatized, focus unlike I usually do. I'm usually the big picture. What's going on? What's the message?
right.
But
The
when I'm
minute details.
right, and when I'm traumatized, by self-defense and by the condition of my brain getting taken over by threat, I start to notice where are all the specific threats. So I notice all the specifics, like I noticed Hillary being stalked. That really affected me. I noticed Kamala walking on stage, striding on stage, and walking from her zone into his zone, reaching out her hand and giving him no choice. Giving him no choice. And then I also noticed, just as you said, you don't remember the specifics. That's fine. I remember whenever he tried to call her Camilla, all those misnomers that he gave her forever, those were all about shaming and disrespect. If
Right.
I can't pay attention to your name, if I don't know that my fellow traveler Denise spells her name with a C, if I don't know that, I'm being disrespectful. Maybe not the first time or the second time, but I'm being disrespectful. So there were all kinds of ways in which he was being disrespectful and shaming, mainly telling lies. Sweetie, what happens to traumatized children when they hear a lie or they hear several lies? What goes on inside of us?
Oh, I get all very wiggly and upset and yeah, triggered. I get triggered with lying.
Remember, we did the program about 2 weeks ago on being overwhelmed, and we both said it felt like
Right,
this. You just
right.
said you get wiggly inside. Can you describe, yeah, what does it mean to feel wiggly? Can you say a bit more if you get in touch with that? And don't go there if it's not safe.
Yeah, it just feels like my molecules are vibrating and I'm unsafe. I feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know what? The research is going to substantiate everything you're saying, Denise. Our molecules vibrate. If, as the Institute for Heart Math has said, my heartbeat and anybody within 5 and possibly 10 feet of me feels the message of my heartbeat without one word being spoken, their molecules are vibrating. And so we know as people that have had children walking in the classroom, we know as they've had adults walk in the boardroom, we know as we've had people come up to us to disagree with us or threaten us, we know what happens in our bodies. It's molecules. It's at a molecular level.
Yeah,
And what does a child need know? What does a child know when she feels all wiggly? What's going on with them? You work with many of these children that come to school wiggly.
right.
What's
I just let them know that you're feeling that. That's a sensation. And I can help you if you want to breathe with me.
yes,
And I practice breathing techniques that we've practiced outside of trauma in a relaxed
right.
mind.
So every day in your classroom, you were offering children when there wasn't a traumatizing force going. on, you were saying to them, let's do what?
Uh, let's, well, we practice specifically for specific breathing techniques every week. Well, twice a week, we did the Feelings Buddies curriculum. And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like when we're standing in line, I would say, well, like when we were studying plants, we decided to be a seed, and then breathe in, we're a seed, breathe
Mm.
out, we're a flower. In, out, and in and out. We'd always do it
Oh,
3 times, and it makes a difference.
was there a magic to the three times?
Uh, 3 times it takes. That was just recommended, and I
Mm-hmm.
I always make myself do 3. Another one that I can do with kids that I don't know that I haven't practiced is smell the flower, blow out the candle, and most kids can do that. And we would do that 3 times. Yep, smell the flower, blow out the candle. I just did
Denise,
that recently with a child, upset child that had at story time at the end.
and can adults do this? Does it work for adults?
Yeah. What the adult that is in the room or whatever, they learn too. And then they can practice that with themselves because honestly, we have to check ourselves first before we can help somebody else.
And here's the issue.
We can't come from survivor state and get somebody out of survivor state.
And there it is. There it is in terms of my heart's desire and responsibility as an adult survivor. My choice is to bring to myself, bring to the people I'm with, invite from the people I'm with, and invite everybody that's with us today or who joins us afterwards to own as much as we can what's going on. One of the first things I do with myself if I need to feel grounded, and by the way, being a survivor, how grounded do you feel when you're in a traumatized state?
No, when your molecules are vibrating, you are not connect. You're not in the flow.
And it is if the ground is here, I'm no longer standing on the ground. I lift off and become that classic term we know so well and we'll share it is dissociated. Dissociated means that I am in such a survival state that my brain is telling me, run, get
Get
out of
out of
here.
here.
Oh, get. Even if I cannot move, I can still dissociate, right?
Right.
And we've talked about that, what you did as a child. You saw yourself going where?
Up in the corner of the room because I also gave myself the clue to never forget. So I wanted to go up in the corner so I could see, so I would never forget.
And you remembered. And I, as a small child, small as I can remember, lifted out of the dangerous place. And I'm going to say something now that may be challenging because I am a sexual abuse survivor. And what I experienced as a child, no child should experience. And yet I did. And so, how did I survive? And what did my body tell me to do? I said, I can't run away from here. There's a big man in this room. I'm a little kid. I'm in a crib. I can't get out of here. So my body knew, and I believe most bodies know, Denise, to just say, goodbye, body, I'm leaving. And I saw myself lifting up out of my body, going through the window, even if it was in the wintertime, going up above the house, being able to look down and see the roof of the house, and looking up as I soared like an angel up to the moon where I could sit for a while, or I could sit on a star, and I was on my way to heaven. And that's what my body did to calm itself down. And I wonder, Denise, they have this thing called tonic sensitivity, which you and I both know as what happens in an animal when the animal is terrified in the moment, like the video on YouTube of goats. What's something
Right.
about fainting goats?
Yeah. Yeah.
A gunshot goes off, and those goats, what do?
They fall out.
They fall right out and their feet go up. And the message that they're giving to the predator is, I'm
I'm
dead.
already dead. I'm no
I'm
good.
already dead. You can't kill me. You can't get any response out of me. And not only that, but if your desire is to eat me alive, you can't do it because I might be dangerous to you. So it's a very smart thing. And you know what? When we faint, we're doing the same thing.
Hmm.
We're doing the same thing. We're saying to the person, this whole big excitement to you, or in my case, the sadism that was involved. The sadism, because I'm going to say this again, take a drink of water, be ready to take a break if you need to. But part of being sexually abused by a narcissist, someone who doesn't have empathy, is that the narcissist can also carry sadism. And sadism gives the narcissist a kind of feedback of excitement. If the narcissist can see somebody like someone else really suffering, really scared, really terrified. So I experienced that sadism. And when I saw it, I just left my body because I knew I couldn't fight back. I couldn't fight back. So these are all the scary things that children learn. And Denise, every day of your work at Head Start for 30 something years, you welcome children into the classroom with ways that they felt they could leave the unsafe places behind. Can you tell us what's one way in which these children, when they walked into your classroom, they were welcomed into a safe space?
Yeah, we intentionally greeted children with a little. I had two things that I built. One was a wishing well, which had a bunch of holes in it, and a popsicle stick with their face went in the wishing well when they left at the end of the day. And when they came in, they would take their stick out of the wishy well and put it into our school family tree. And then when they put their face into the school family tree, they would say, I am here, I am safe.
I am here. I am safe.
And part of our greeting included fun. We gave them knuckle bump, high five, hugs. They got to select what greeting they wanted.
And that's become really popular
Yes,
on YouTube and Facebook. There are always these pictures, usually of elementary school, but sometimes preschool teachers having. Well, can you describe what it is so a child can choose in the moment? This is what I
right.
need.
Well, so what I also had next to the wish you well and the school family tree, we had a little greetings choice. It was another little piece of log, and they were on popsicle sticks too, and it was a visual image of hug, high five, knuckle bump. I'm trying to think of other ones.
Sometimes there was a wiggle, and sometimes what teachers do is a
Okay,
wiggle. We can wiggle together.
yeah, some teachers that are really smart have an individual dance with each child.
Ah,
They have to remember which child likes which dance and all that. So I had to have mine more simple, which they showed me the stick that they wanted.
and yet you gave the children a choice,
Yes, and they were still individualized.
and they were seen as individuals. And there it is when we talk about trauma surviving, especially on this day, which could be a scary day of the election in the United States. When people have choices, we have agency. And more
Right.
powerful than that, our brain can function more fully than if my brain shuts down, as we said often on this program. When I'm terrified and traumatized, my brain The executive function, the part that can make choices, shuts down to maybe 5 to 10%. So I don't feel I've got any choices. All I've got to do is do what my brain says, which is get out of here. And if I can't get out of here, what am I going to do? Well, I went up to heaven and Denise went up to the top of her room. What do we do today if we watch television? What do we do with ourselves tomorrow? Can I, as an adult, say, smell the rose and blow out the candle? You bet I can. I'm going to be flying to speak in California about the choice of being either a reactor to trauma or an actor when trauma comes close. And that comes from a man who experienced severe trauma as a survivor of a home where both parents were alcoholics and where the mother died. And one of his traits is he chose to go by just his first name and his last initial because he was in 12-step programs, Tony A. One Tony A's trait is, if I am traumatized, I become a reactor to everything around me, not an actor. And the way to recover from that trait is to choose. Here we go. Choose to take action. And Denise, everything you're telling me about a child is telling a child, I might come in terrified because last night my father might have done this to me, but I can't still let anybody know. So if I'm going in the door, all I can do, maybe I can't bear anybody to touch me. So I'll just do something safe like a high five. When I get in the room, I can go get that safe popsicle stick with an image of me on it, and I can place that in the tree of safety. Do you think years after that, those children remember?
I do. I believe
I
they
do
do.
too. I do too. Has anyone ever said anything to you about it?
Uh, I do have contact with a lot of the families that I worked
Yes.
with either in the classroom or at story time. And
Yes.
I think that they remember that sense of I am safe, that I am a safe person, and I believe it is my job to keep you safe.
Yes.
So I think they sense that and they stick with me. I have a lot of kids that now I'm this summer I tutored a lot of kids from story time, and
Yes.
I also tutored one of my students, and it's because they already trust me, so it's easy to give them tutoring.
So let's look, because here's my belief, and I believe you embody it and did so intentionally for years. My belief is that the strategies, the techniques, the healing activities we help children learn to do, we can carry into adulthood. How
Yeah,
do you feel?
we're helping ourselves by doing it. I mean, I taught myself how to be safe within myself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we try to teach that to children too, and to acknowledge the actual feelings and sensations. Like I didn't believe I had feelings at one time in my life. I thought I was incapable of it and that I denied or ignored feelings. And uh, by teaching children to know, to understand, and know their feelings, I taught myself.
And I'm going to say, we talk about this a lot. Dr. Claudia Black, who said the 3 rules that kids learn in any dysfunctional family. Don't you dare talk to anybody. You don't tell anybody what's going on. You don't trust any adult. Only the people in the house were, of course, not trustworthy. So there's a mixed message. And lastly, don't feel. Why would a traumatized child be taught not to feel, Denise?
So that they can continue to be abused,
Right.
so they don't, say or act.
Right. And the thing that you and I did when we were threatened by big men who had control, and we didn't have control, and we didn't have a voice. We did what our bodies allowed us to do, which was to escape, to get out of the feeling, because the feeling of being abused was just too impossible. In
Right.
fact,
It was very confusing because some sensations are pleasant.
right. And actually, we're finally getting attention from someone that never gave us attention.
Right. So it's it's hard. It's
It's really hard. And here's what I know to be true for trauma recovery. You taught yourself, which is great. For a long time, have been asking for help from therapists. And most recently, since there's now the specialist of trauma therapists, that specialty, I seek and vet and interview people who know that. And I've discovered that the more, this is part of your point, the more I come to trust that I can be safe with that person, the more I can be safe within myself. And the gift is the more feelings return.
right.
And that is what I've discovered is not only does my body keep the score, but my body is taking care of me. Do you feel like your body takes care of you in addition to helping you get out of that terrifying situation? How else does your body take care of you that a child's body might even?
Um, I, one thing is I have a pretty good diet. I eat regularly, and so my body likes that.
So you're honoring your body and taking care of your body. Does
Right.
your body tell you, how long does it take your body to tell you if you're in danger?
If I'm in danger, it's immediate.
Yes, it is. And is that saving you?
Yeah,
What's it doing for you?
right. It makes me alert to attend.
So when I was, because Denise worked directly with children in the classroom, I began there, but then I did other things. And after I went to law school, then I was working primarily with adults, and I would be the only woman walking into a board of all men, and I would pick up feelings, and the feelings were, "You don't belong here. We don't want you here." And if they didn't say it out loud, if I made a comment, they would just, it didn't happen. I didn't say it. And so I felt all I could feel at the time, which was, they don't want me here. And that's one of the worst things a child or an adult can feel. You don't belong. We don't
Right.
belong. We don't have a life. So the thing I did, I'm just saying this for the first time, the thing I did was I was angry. I didn't call it anger. But when the executive director of this board I was on, and I was their legal advisor, there were other police officers, police, mostly people who were head of police departments, other lawyers. When the executive director would ask, "How can we resolve this problem?" and many of the people in the room would say, "When it was not worth even talking about, we're not going to get funding for it," which was a slam. And so I listened to that. I let them say all that. And then I allowed my anger to go through me and say, "I understand what Jonathan and Mark and BJ have said. Funding for this is difficult. I understand that. And at the same time, I want to invite you guys to consider, here's a possible source of funding that has just recently opened. And I'm glad to share this all with Marty, executive director, so he can share it with you." And they still didn't hear. But you know what I did after that? I channeled my feeling of I don't belong here, because I knew I belonged there. I was hired to be in this position because they hired me. They didn't just hire anybody. And so what I learned to do, Denise, to be safe and to get the job done, was to talk with one of the men beforehand, who I knew was a good old boy. And I knew if he said something, they'd listen to him. So we'd have coffee or we'd just talk beforehand. I knew it wasn't good for him to be too associated with me. But I would say, what you said the last time? Well, I just want to build on that. Here's something that I've discovered. So he would go in and say, you know what? I mean, he didn't give me credit. It didn't matter. He would
Right.
say, you know what? I've looked into this and I've discovered that there's a new grant source coming from this, blah, 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 and we might look into that. And then the guys are slapping each other on the back and saying, wow, hey. So, what I'm trying to say here is, I didn't allow myself to have feelings because I was enraged at their rejection.
Right.
I was enraged at their arrogance. I was enraged because it re-triggered everything in me where my father had put no value in me. He would yell, "Get her out of my sight," when he saw me. So all of those things would come up, but I would channel them and I would channel them into effective action. And to do that, I needed to remind myself, this can't be about my getting praised. I can't expect that from this group. If I expect it, I'm going to hurt myself. So, how does all of this, you're feeling it right away when you feel threatened, you're teaching yourself what the feelings are. My learning through trauma therapists and through my own experience of being threatened, how to channel those feelings of anger into action. How can that help us on this election day? How can that help somebody who's like watching the results come in and maybe it looks like what the Supreme Court said, which is any president of the United States is exempt, can do anything he has to do. And we
Right.
see perhaps that happening.
Right.
We
Which
perhaps see
makes
the
us
prison
unsafe.
camps. Exactly.
So what I'm doing for a week now is whenever I do feel anxious, I close
Mm-hmm.
my eyes and I think of Kamala Harris standing at the podium saying, I, Kamala Harris, do solemnly swear that I will protect and something else,
Defend the
the
Constitution.
Constitution of the United States. And then she has a big smile. I've been imagining that for a week now,
What a
five,
great,
10 times a day.
mm-hmm. What a great image.
And I'm feeling that the women are coming together this time, and that because of the Me Too movement, which we started our
Yes.
conversation at,
Say more,
was
sweetie. Let's pick up on that. You didn't really get a chance.
well, the Me Too movement was about this. I don't even remember who the original sufferer was, but in my mind, I always think of Anita Hill, how she had to suffer in that appointing of the pig. And but other women came forward and said, we stopped being quiet. And by saying me too, so many women found support and found the ability to say me too, even if they
Do you
just said it
remember?
to their best friend or whatever. It was
Do
a
you, do you remember how you first heard that?
no, I don't remember how I first heard it, but when I first heard it, I knew I belonged with
Yes.
with that too. I
And
belonged with me too.
look at that. You just said something really crucial for a trauma survivor.
Right. I belonged.
That's right. And the message is
And
always, you don't belong
so
here.
many women do. And because it was such a simple thing, me too, which every woman has been pursued inappropriately by a guy, or, I mean, even on Facebook, we get messages from complete strangers that are, I noticed you're very this or that, or whatever. I mean, we've all been traumatized in this culture of patriarchy, and Donald Trump obnoxious, vulgar
He will
activities.
protect
And
us, even if we
women,
don't want to be protected.
right, whether they want it or not, which
Mhm.
that's what the thing is. And so I think it's really bringing women together. And I think that we're not saying it so much. Like, I don't hear a lot of talk out in the world about it, but I believe that I can feel that women are coming together on this, and we're gonna crush patriarchy.
Sweetie, I'm so glad you have that feeling. And I have had that for much of the time. And then probably the last week, I have felt a lot of tension. And so I want to say what you're identifying is crucial because when code words are said to women, it's like when code words are said to any group that's been demeaned. When those code words are said, we get it. So when Kamala Harris came on as when she was elected and she said, I know a predator when I see one.
Right. Oh, that was so good.
What message did that give you?
I'm
Yeah.
safe with her. I am safe
Mm-hmm.
with her. I am safe. And so many women know that.
When I heard that, I heard her telling me, I know that he is a predator. I know that. And I'm a prosecutor. I put people like that away so they can't hurt people anymore. That's what she did. That's what she does. That was code to me. So when his code is, I'll protect them, whether they like it or not, the code for me as a sexual abuse survivor was, I've got you. You're trapped. You don't want this, but I'm going to do whatever I want to do to you. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the Supreme Court just gave me authority. Has anyone noticed that the Supreme Court's decision went into effect already? But has President Biden or Vice President Harris ever said, well, we're going to do what the Supreme Court said we're going to do, and we're going to we're going to, this is going to happen because we say it has to happen? Hell no.
No,
It's like people are just
because they
believing
don't
that.
abuse power.
Thank you.
Predators abuse power. Uh, and this is the sensation that I get from Kamala as well, is that she wants to use the power for the good of the people.
Yes. Kamala Harris for the people. That's so powerful. That's another code. That
Yeah.
is another code. When we look back, Denise, when you look back at her whole campaign, did she ever allow herself to get enraged at all of the horrible stuff that was being said and done?
No. And I mean, a few times when reporters asked her questions about what Donald Trump thinks, or I don't know, she called herself together and responded in a polite and good way. Like, she didn't say fuck Donald Trump or whatever, even if she
Mm.
wanted to.
And in fact, when I observed her doing over and over again, and it's thanks in part to an attorney's training, but it's thanks also to knowing about trauma. When the trigger started, it usually comes in indirectly. It's usually like a code so that the message is, I'm going to, coming from the traumatizer, the predator, I'm just fine. You're the one that's upset. What's your problem? So when
Right.
the code comes in, I'm not going to say your name properly. That's instant disrespect. So when she broke the code and walked over to his side of the room, that was breaking the code. She also got interviewed on Fox News.
Right. Brave.
And brave. And I noticed that Trump didn't go on MSNBC.
No,
So
he
she
didn't.
went on, he didn't. And she went on Fox News. And when the interviewer pulled up the wrong tape, because there was a very clear tape of the right-wing candidate saying, this is what I'm going to do. And the Fox interviewer said, I'll pull up that tape. He pulled up the wrong tape. He pulled up something else that was just meant to do what predators do, which is to distract. She stopped him and he talked over her. Classic. She stopped him. He attempted to talk over her. She spoke up. He attempted one more time and she said, wait, you and I both know that that is not the video that shows what we're talking about. You and I both know that. She told him the truth. She put it right out there. Everybody else that had watched news had seen this over and over again. And so he had the choice of either lying directly, which is what the candidate does, or sort of covering up. He didn't do much during the interview, but afterwards, I think in his own way, he admitted that he pulled up the wrong tape. So what I witnessed her doing is again and again being prepared for the triggers. So when they came, she could tick them off. Like you and I are preparing, you were preparing children to tick them off. I'm hopefully preparing adults to tick them off. When someone comes up, this used to happen all the time, and look at my body before looking me in the eye. That could either trigger the bejesus out of me and I would start really angry, or I would just get into my lawyer-like position of being strong, and you can't get me that way. You can't get me that way. So as we talk, and let's look at our time. We've got about 12 minutes left. As we're talking about these important things, Denise, like how we can, with ourselves, you have this practice of picturing Kamala taking that pledge, right? You have,
Kamala Harris.
right. That's
Solemnly
beautiful.
swear and a big
Beautiful.
smile.
And a big smile, and that's a beautiful image, and that image will restore sanity to your brain and your soul. And the amygdala, which has taken over and is spurting out, telling our systems to just run because of the adrenaline and the dangerous cortisol, which is telling us be depressed, be very depressed. I'm sure that I was full of cortisol when my father was doing the sexual acts that he was doing because I felt weighed down. Cortisol is a weighty, hopeless thing.
Right.
So when I feel that coming and I know it's coming, I can say, and I do this with adult groups all the time, stop in the name of love. Get out of my face. I'm not letting you through my boundary. And the Me Too movement, I remember, I'm really glad you raised that because I remember I first heard about it online. Someone sent me a message and it just said, if you have ever experienced abuse or threat of abuse, particularly sexual abuse, all you have to do is write 2 words, me too. And I don't even remember if it was me, TOO, or me too, but I just immediately wrote it down and sent and clicked send. And that was something that gave us all, that was post the election with Hillary, right?
Right.
Gave us all permission to say to each other what you're saying. That women have had enough.
Yep. We had enough of the patriarchal men just take what they want. They can't do that anymore. We don't like it.
Even like it, even though the Supreme Court with what now, 3 women, 4 women on it? I mean, I always think of we are ruthless now because we don't have Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Right.
Such a major loss, but we do have Sonia Sotomayor, who said, I fear for our democracy. I fear for our democracy. So how many women do we have now? We've got her. We've got Elena Kagan. We have got Katanji. And then we've got the person who's kind of nameless to me because I see her as just part of a group, a clump of white folk,
Right.
but it's still not
Yes.
the majority. And it's still,
Right.
we know what the majority is. So, Denise, thank you for raising these things that we can look to, which is women, many women believing our vote counts. I tell you, when I voted last week by mail, I really seriously took every one of the ballots because in Massachusetts we had some pretty serious other things being considered. And of course, every vote mattered. So I filled everything out consciously. I signed it. No, excuse me. I sealed up the envelope. Then I signed it. And then I took it to my city's Dropbox. And I got out of my car. And as I took this ballot, which was sacred to me, let's talk about why ballots are sacred. What's sacred to a trauma survivor? And before I opened the space to put in my ballot, I kissed my ballot. I didn't think I was going to do that, but I did it. What helped me understand what I might have been doing when I kissed my ballot?
You're wishing it well. Do your job, ballot. Do it. It's a
Love,
magical uh wish.
it's like a blessing.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be religious. I respect people that are, but I'm not. But I don't have to be religious to give a blessing.
Mm-mm.
A blessing is simply wanting the best. It's like this. When I go to India, I do this a lot. I do it a lot here because namaste means, do you know what it means literally?
I see the God in you. The God in me sees the God in you.
It's for me basically saying, I respect your soul. I respect my soul. And here together, we create a space where we're not going to hurt each other. We're going to lift each
Right.
other up.
We're gonna be safe.
Yes. So that when I'm listening to somebody and she or he is saying something that's sacred like that, I honor your soul. I will not take away your rights. I will not hurt you. That's the same as kissing my ballot and sending it out to do its work. Now, here's a question I've asked Denise, which is not one people want to deal with. And I asked it with a group of women I was with. They were all wonderful women from 55 years ago. It was a women's college. It was not a wealthy women's college. It was a women's college that I really respect called Douglas College, where a lot of us were our parents were immigrants, or our grandparents were immigrants. What it took to get in was you had to be bright, but you didn't have to be rich. So we had a similar curriculum to all of the Seven Sisters colleges, really rigorous, tough curriculum. We helped each other through it. We have stayed friends ever since then. And all of us are in support, of course, of one candidate. And the question I raised was, so are we prepared? How are we prepared to deal if she does not win? And I'm looking
Yeah.
at your face, girl. It's like, what? Just let's talk about just what does that question do?
Yeah, I don't know. I have said move to Costa Rica a couple times in response to that question, but
Mm-hmm.
it's I just don't even want to imagine it because it is so regressive and I can't
Yes.
I can't even imagine it.
And thank you for saying that because that was my sense of what all these other mature, bright, hardworking women that had faced a whole lot since 1963 and before. Um, I feel like that's what people were saying. I don't want to look at that, Holly Elisa. why would I want to go there? I want to have the hope. And what you're saying is absolutely respectable. I want that hope too. And yet I'm asking myself, and now we've got about 6 minutes left, my friend. I'm asking myself and us, can I answer that question? And as a trauma survivor, because I am a trauma survivor, and help myself by asking and answering that question. And I'm going to try to do that. And if you have a response, please go ahead.
What I did last time Donald Trump won was I got on a bus and went to Washington, D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
acquired a pink pussy hat,
Mm-hmm.
and I maybe I should wear this for the next couple days.
Damn, I should get mine out too.
We need it.
Yes. God, I said, yeah, honey. Oh, that's awesome. Mine is like this really flamingo pink. I'm going to get it out. I wore that for days. I wore that for months.
You know what I'm going to do tomorrow morning? We live right across the street from a polling place, and I got a I got a cat, and it says Kamala and Harris. It goes on the side of my van. If you look at my profile picture on
I
Facebook,
will. Yeah.
I'm going to put that out. We're going to put that out in the morning for the voters. And maybe I'll stand out there with my pussy hat.
And that's an interesting thing about how close can you be to the pole?
We're across the street, so we're far enough away.
All right, girl, as long as you're meeting with the requirements, I'm
Oh yeah,
glad.
I'm not
I'm
pushing
glad.
any laws. Although we have three signs in our yard, and one of the neighbors came and told Gina that some of the residents in our courtyard or our community or whatever were
Mm-hmm.
offended by her signs, and she fought with she didn't move the signs.
Good for her. Sweetie, I want to pick up on what you said because you and I both intuitively did the same thing. I got in my car and I drove to the Women's March. They were all over the country, which was really super. And I wore my hat, which my neighbor made for me. She was knitting all of these hats. And I told her, I'm going to the march. She gave me a hat. And I was so depressed after the election that it called upon all my depression as a trauma survivor. I'm not safe. I can't even have a voice. The law is not going to be honored. And all of those things came true.
Right,
And yet, when I put myself in my car and I drove a 16-year-old girl who wanted to go to the march, but her mother would only let her go with me because she knew I would be safe. And I drove with
right,
a friend born in Mexico because she didn't feel safe. So the three of us went together the whole time, supporting each other, talking with each other. And I want to say that in our concluding moments, because if what happens often happens with trauma survivors, we get set back one step forward, we get set back. I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. We're going to keep doing this program until the Nazis come and kick us off. And
right,
if they kick us off, we'll keep doing it another way.
right,
Because trauma survivors know what you said, Denise. Abuse of power is never humane and it cannot persist. And Joan of Arc, when they were burning her at the stake, had a choice to confess, oh, I didn't mean what I did. And for a moment, she thought about it. But then she said no. And that horrible destruction of her, horrible. And I don't want to talk about the other horrible destructions, but we might have prison camps for people that we respect. And we might get put in
yeah,
there too for just being everyday people that are
right.
not in support.
I have a
You know
sticker
what?
on my van. They could pull me over.
Yep, that's right. And my friends from the back 55 years ago in that women's college, which was very feminist, we believe women had a voice. We believe women had a future. We believe women could have choices about who we could be and what we could do. We got smacked around every which way, but we kept going. We used to joke, hey, I'll meet up with you in the feminist old folks home. And
Right,
now I'm thinking, Hey, maybe we'll meet up in the
We'll meet up
concentration
in the
camp.
voting booth right now.
And we are. And we are. And whatever happens this week, honey,
We'll deal with it. We'll
we'll
deal
deal
with
with it. We'll face it. And being a trauma survivor will not ruin me. It will give me skills.
it. Yep. And we're already there.
So
We're already organized against him. So
we
if he
are.
wins, we are already organized and we will figure it out.
And we will be for rights, for people's rights to be human.
We
So
got to go.
thank you, everybody that's joined us. Thank you, Denise, for joining every week. I will, next week. No, yeah, I'll be back next week. We're good.
Okay.
We're good. I fly across the country tomorrow. I probably wear my hat.
I think it's a good idea.
Don't touch my hat. Okay, let us say farewell. And Denise and I do this together because we're on a new system for recording. So I know what I do is to go to recording.
Stop
When
recording.
I hit stop recording, to the world, to freedom, to persecuted and prosecuted people everywhere, may mercy and justice prevail. Do you have a wish
Liberty
for
and
the world?
justice for all.
That's right. And support of the Constitution.